All right, so this is going to be the USA Swim Meet info decoder. It's basically going to be a how-to guide for parents and swimmers to be able to understand a swim meet info packet or info document. So just the purpose is to just give you guys a better understanding of standard meet info documents that we use for USA Swimming, as well as some other major swim meets. The format for the one that we're going to review here is for a USA Swim Meet. But you'll find, if you're ever looking at a meet, sometimes some of the bigger YMCA meets have a similar info packet, as well as some other meets have similar packets as well. But almost all USA Swim meets will follow this format. That's the most common one we're going to see. So this is a pretty standard meet entry or a meet document file. I'm going to point out some of the important sections for you guys. This meet is a little complex. It's a 2-day prelims final style meet. And so I figured that would give us the most information to look through. All right, so this is your first page of the info packet. These packets can be anywhere from 5 to 12 pages long. I think this one is right around 9 or 10 pages. So it is a lot of info, and a lot of it doesn't really apply to the average swimmer or parent. A lot of this is info that the coaches need to know. So starting right up at the top, now I've kind of highlighted the important sections for you guys. But right at the top, you get the header. It's going to have the date and the title of the meet. Sometimes you'll see who's hosting it or what pool it's at, some other info, but it's basically what you're going to get there. Below that, you've got all of the contact information. As parents or swimmers, you should almost never be contacting these people directly. It should always pretty much be going through the coach. The coach should be the one contacting them. They get a lot of emails and they don't want to receive extras. So if you ever have a question, ask the coach, and if the coach doesn't know, he will ask the appropriate person. Under that, you're going to find the session info. So this meet has a bunch of sessions there because it is split up into 12 and unders, 13 and overs. There's 2 days, prelims and finals. So there's a lot of info there, but you're going to see the warm-up times and the start times. That's kind of the most important bit for you. One thing you'll see on there is you have a warm-up time that starts at 7 a.m. And the meet starts at 8. That doesn't necessarily mean that your swimmer will be warming up from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. What typically happens is once they've received all the meet entries, they're going to split it up and they'll assign warm-ups to each team. So your team might get 7 to 7:20 or 7 to 7:30 or 7:30 to 8, something along those lines. So down below that now we've got the deadlines, the site, and the format. These are all pretty important bits for parents to know. So deadline is going to tell you the first day of entry, the last day of entry, and the payment deadline. For parents, that should be more or less transparent to you. What you'll often see is I will send out an email and say, I need entries by this date. And it might be a week, it might be 2 weeks, it might be 3 weeks before the deadline. The point for that is, sometimes meets fill, and so if we think a meet is going to fill quickly, we might try to send our entries in early. And that also gives me time to get the entries from parents, put them into the computer, do all of that work, and then send it in to the meet director. And it also gives us time to write the check and get the check mailed out to the host team. So those dates might not always be the date that I give you, may be different than the date on this form. But after that date, there's almost guaranteed you're not going to get into the meet. If we have a change before that date, sometimes we can get it in. The site, that's going to tell you where the meet is being held and any information about the pool. It might include information about spectator seating, where the meet is at, all that kind of stuff. The format is going to tell you the type of the meet. Typically, you'll see either prelims finals or you'll see timed finals. We're going to go over both of those on the next slide. So here we go, timed finals and prelims finals. So a timed finals meet is a meet where every event is only run once, and the place you finish in is determined immediately after the event is over. This is the format you'll see at a YMCA dual meet for the most part. You'll see this format used at YMCA states, and most single day meets will use this type of format. The other place you see this is distance events for multi-day meets. So a lot of times for like a 3-day meet, we'll do the distance event on Friday night, and those will be time finals because they don't want to run those events twice because they're so long. Prelims and finals is different. So with prelims and finals, they run all the events, all the heats, typically in the morning. Not always, but typically prelims will be in the morning. And then you'll have finals in the afternoon. So they'll take the top swimmers from the morning, and then they will come back and swim again in the afternoon. So this particular meet is going to be prelims finals for 13 and overs, but 12 and unders are going to do timed finals, and that's pretty common. So they're going to run 2 heats for finals, which means the top 12 swimmers in this case are going to come back. The important thing to note with a meet like this is if you're one of those prelims and final swimmers, so for this meet, if you were 13 and over, you would need to be prepared to come back in the afternoon. So, we've had it before where swimmers cannot come back. They have other things going on. You have a family event or other activities, and that's okay, but it's usually best to just plan on coming back. Don't plan on not making it, because that will not set you up for success. So now you have scratches, course, and eligibility. A lot of this page doesn't really apply. It's information that's important for the coach to know, but not necessarily for parents and swimmers to know. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there, but the main things you want to know is scratch procedure. So if you know you may need to scratch an event, that'll tell you how to do it, what the deadlines are, what the consequences are. So sometimes if you need to scratch an event and you don't do it by the deadline, your swimmer could then get kicked out of the meet, which obviously we don't want to happen. So those are important things to know. So like if you sign up for a meet 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time, something comes up and now you can't make it on Sunday, but you can be there Friday, Saturday. The coach is going to need to scratch your events for Sunday. And if we don't do that in time, it could incur fines for the team, or it could result in your swimmer being kicked out of the meet. So we don't want that to happen. Then you have the course. So on here it just says SCY, and that's short course yards. There are 3 courses that you can see: short course yards, short course meters, and long course meters. So SCY, SCM, LCM. Typically in the winter, you're going to see SCY, short course yards. In the summer, you're going to see some short course yards, some long course meters. It'll depend on the facility and what they're doing. But typically, winter is short course season, summer is long course season. It's pretty rare to see short course meters. There aren't very many short course meters pools in the area that we're in. Eligibility is pretty self-explanatory. It'll tell you what makes you eligible for the meet. For a USA meet, it usually says you have to be a USA member. It'll tell you what your age group for the meet is, all of that. But just tells you how you know you're able to participate. Next up, we get cut protocol, entries, and relays. Again, a lot of stuff that doesn't really apply to parents and swimmers. But in the entries section, this is probably the important piece of this page. The entry section is going to tell you how many events you're allowed to swim per day and the max number of events for the meet. So for some meets, you might see that you're allowed to swim 4 events per day, but only 8 events total for the meet, as an example. So if it's a 3-day meet, you can swim 4 events per day, but if you did that, you would be over the max number of entries. And teams do this to just cut down on the number of heats that they have to run to make sure we can get all the events in the allotted time. There's also a little bit there about entry time updates. So if you needed to update your entry times before a meet, this would tell you how to do that and when the last day that you can update. It's usually about a week before the meet. The real reason for doing this, or why you would want to do this, is if you had another meet the weekend prior and you had a big time drop, then you want to update your time, because that could potentially move you to a faster heat and a more competitive heat. We see this a lot for like a championship meet, not so much for a regular meet early in the season. Now we've got time trials, fees, admissions, and meet mobile. So time trials, if you don't know what a time trial is, it's basically just an extra event. Your swimmer may be doing it by themselves. They'll be the only one in the pool. There may be multiple people who want to do that event, and they'll run heat for multiple swimmers. But these are extra events, so they usually cost an extra fee, and they're at the discretion of the meet director whether or not you want to run them. Some meet directors are better about it than others, and they'll allow it. Some meet directors won't allow it. And a lot of times it just depends on if they have the time to do it. If the meet is running on time. If the meet's behind, they may not allow that. These are kind of useful if you want a time in an event that maybe isn't offered on the days you're going to be there, or isn't offered for your age group. So like if you have a 10-year-old who wants to swim a distance event, but there's no option for the 10-year-olds to swim the distance event, they may do a time trial. And so that way they can get a time. Fees are everyone's favorite section. This tells you how much you have to pay. So typically you'll see cost for an individual event, cost for relay events, and athlete surcharge, and sometimes you'll see a facility surcharge. So typically you'll pay $5 per event. Sometimes distance events cost a little bit more. Relays usually cost a little bit more, but then they're split up between the swimmers, or you're just paying a set fee. It depends on how they set up the meet. And then you have a athlete surcharge, which goes to the swimming organization, not necessarily the host team. They don't get to do that. Usually $1 or $2. And then a facility surcharge, which may go to help pay the facility that's hosting the meet if it's not owned by the host team. That's kind of how those are broken down. For admissions, this meet is free. There's no cost for parents to get in, but sometimes you do have meets where parents have to pay to come in and watch the meet. And then it also tells you if there are meet programs available to purchase or not. And to go with that, you have Meet Mobile. So Meet Mobile is an app, and you can look at live meet results as they come in. It's not always up to the minute. It does tend to lag behind a little bit, but it's nice to have, and you can usually see the psych sheet and heat sheets, which will tell you kind of where your swimmer is placed. And where they're at in the meet. Down on the second half of this page, warm-up awards, scoring, legal splits, and swimwear. A lot of information here, not all of it super important. The warm-up section is going to give you any additional info you might need for warm-up. In here, sometimes you'll see if a facility has two pools and one pool is being used as a warm-up pool, they might include that info here. Awards, it'll tell you if there are any awards. So you might get heat winner ribbons, high point award for the swimmers who score the most points during the meet, team awards for the team that scores the most points, anything like that will be here. The legal split section, there's a lot of information there, but what it basically comes down to is if you are swimming an event and you want part of that event to be timed as a separate event. So I put a couple examples there, but if you're swimming the 1000 free and you need a legal time in the 500 free, you can just swim the 1000 free and get a time for both events. The same thing goes for a relay. If you are the leadoff leg, so if you're the first swimmer in the relay, in that example, a 200 free relay, and you want a 50 free time, we can time it separately. We just have to, usually you have to provide extra timers, and the officials have to know. But that can be a good way to get a 50 free time if you don't have enough events to swim the relay and the 50 free, you can still get a time. The swimwear section is typically going to be the same for every meet, unless you're doing like an open water race at a lake or something, then they might have rules about wetsuits and things like that. But swimwear for basic USA meets or YMCA meets is almost always going to be the same. There'll be rules about tech suits for 12 and under swimmers, all that. The rules section, so it started on the last page, but it's mostly on here. So the most important thing on here is going to be anything that involves photography or video. Different facilities might have different rules for where you're allowed to take photos. For USA meets, photos are never allowed behind the blocks. So if their spectator seating area extends behind the diving blocks, you cannot have cameras out there or phones out there taking pictures. Some meets are even stricter about that. You can't have phones, period, behind the blocks, but certainly not taking pictures. Typically, the rest of the meet is good to take pictures, but they usually, you don't want flash photography behind the blocks or at the start of a race, because that could false start a swimmer. Safety section. A lot of the safety rules are kind of common sense things. If there's anything weird or different about this facility, the coach will probably let you know. And safe sport down at the bottom there. Safe sport is super important. I just talked about it a little bit when I talked about photography, but all the applicable info for safe sport will be down here. And it'll also tell you how to report a safe sport violation if you think one has occurred. So very important section there. Getting towards the end now. Weather, deck access, general info. Weather will typically state that it's up to the discretion of the facility or the meet director if they want to continue the meet, close for weather, anything like that. Same thing with rescheduling the meet. Deck access is going to be important, so that'll tell you who is allowed on deck. For a USA meet, it's probably only going to be coaches, officials, and swimmers. So parents have to stay in the spectator area. You can't be on deck with the kids. And there's a couple reasons for that, but mainly it keeps the deck clear, and it prevents any kind of safe sport violation or people who shouldn't be there being there. Then we have the general info, and the general info is just kind of anything that doesn't fit anywhere else. So in this case, it says that they're going to have concessions in the gym or in the cafeteria, sorry. So just kind of anything that doesn't have a spot will go there. And lastly, here we get directions and events. So directions is going to give you directions to the pool. This could be like full-on map road directions, and it could just be, hey, the pool is located behind the school next to this field, which is the case here. So sometimes you have a big high school or a college pool, and the pool is a very small part of the athletic center. And so they do this to kind of help guide you to where you're supposed to be going, so you're not just wandering around campus. Oftentimes, there's not just a big front door that says pool this way. The events section will tell you the order of events for this session and for every day. In this case, though, it's a multi-day meet, and they've decided to include it on its own page after this. So here's that order of events. This is just one page. I believe there were 3 for this meet. But it'll tell you the order of events. This is really helpful for you when you're choosing events and kind of figuring out what your swimmer wants to participate in. And for a long meet, you can look at this and say, we'll do these events on Saturday, these events on Sunday. So that can be really helpful. And the last page here is just an entry, payment, and liability form. So this is for the coach, essentially. So anything that the coach has to sign, liability waiver, or anything like that, where to send the check to, how much the fees are going to be, all that will be on this page. And that's it. So hopefully this information helps you learn a little bit more about swim meets and allows you to get the most out of the sport for yourself and your swimmers. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks for watching.